I was the black sheep, the odd one out. And as a result, I received a lot of bullying throughout my childhood. Bullying was really vicious. What really brought me to appreciate medicine was being in hospital for several days as an inpatient and coming into contact with lots of different figures, particular nurses, taking very good care of me and trying to be the kind, consoling presence that I really needed. We simply don't have the time to be so detailed, and it's sad. Sometimes all you need to do is to let patients talk and open up. Try to approach them as another human being with a smile. The profession is in a shambles. It's really hard. We are all frustrated. We are tired. It's chaotic. I have been chased by angry families that were upset by the loss of their relative. I found myself being cornered in a room with someone that wanted to punch me. Often the people that are in charge of making decisions nowadays not only do not have all the experience, they're not clinical, so they don't fully understand certain aspects of what their decisions would have an effect on. In my book, I make a parallel between the nervous system in the body and in an organization.
Join Disruptive Doctors.
I'm Dr. Selina, your host and co-founder of Disruptive Doctors. At Disruptive Doctors, we're building a platform to help doctors like you impact healthcare differently. In Postcall, we dive into the untold stories of doctors who are breaking the mold, trailblazers who are redefining what it means to be a doctor. This is Postcall Beyond the White Coat. So our guest today isn't just a doctor. He's a disruptor, an innovator, and an advocate for transforming healthcare from inside out. Dr. Pietro Garbelli is a specialist in acute medicine with an extensive experience leading emergency services and driving healthcare innovation. He's not only a clinical leader, but also the author of the book The Doctor's Voice, where he confronts burnout, systemic failures, and the urgent need for radical reform. So today we're going to dive into his journey, his struggles, and his vision for a future where doctors can reclaim their voices and healthcare becomes truly compassionate and effective. Dr. Garbelli, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, so let's start from the very, very beginning. Who is Dr. Pietro Garbelli? Beyond the white coat, how would you describe yourself?
Well, for a starter, I turned 50 years old today. It's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm originally from the northern part of Italy. I grew up in a small town and then I moved to study in Milan, Florence, and then eventually London in the UK. I'm single. I live in a pretty small apartment in the center of London. I enjoy traveling and I enjoy small things in life like good food, good company, and learning and helping people.
Okay, in your book, you mentioned you had a difficult childhood. What was that like?
As I mentioned, I grew up in a small town. So when I was born, it was roughly 6,000 people living there. So pretty traditional values and quite small-minded, quite religious, cultural upbringing. So I didn't fit in. I was the black sheep, the odd one out. And as a result, I received a lot of bullying throughout my childhood. And so it was really challenging to develop authentic relationships and friendships. I always had to hold back my true authentic self. I couldn't be completely open, and that made me feel inadequate and sad about not being able to have a true friendship and always having to hide parts of me and pretend. And that went on until I started being in Milan and being surrounded by people that were more open-minded and more like myself. And I started exploring the world and come out of the shell. So it's been a long 18, 19 years of solitude that shaped part of who I am.
Do you feel that you still carry that with you? I guess it is an experience from being bullied. Do you carry that with you till now?
Yeah. Yes, totally. I don't think we can ever totally shed, from an emotional point of view, such an experience. We can work through it, we can mature, we can change our coping mechanism, but there is a deep part of us that never forgets, and it's quite challenging to get to heal that part. I'm still working on it to the day. It does affect sometimes us in unexpected moments, how we suddenly react to an external trigger and we surprise ourselves and don't recognize our behavior and think, wait a moment, I am not normally like that. I don't like being like that. When you suddenly get defensive or aggressive or particularly angry, that's a clue. That's something that we still haven't completely looked at.
Could you share a little bit more about, if it's okay with you, like what was the bullying like?
But the bullying was really vicious. It was about me behaving differently from what was culturally expected. So not being like a macho kid and kicking and punching with the others and playing in the football field. So or being a little bit more bookish and nerdy and liking to read, enjoy music, things like that were perceived as being completely out of tune. So the bullying was coming from my peers, from other kids, male and female, by the way. It wasn't only as we would expect, man against man. Everyone was pointing out my difference, and I really didn't understand them. I didn't understand what was wrong. And I started, I believe, like every kid does, if the whole world around you tells you something, you start believing them. You start thinking there's something wrong with yourself, not with them. So it took a long journey until I started understanding that the world is full of lots of differences, and people like me were everywhere in the world, and the world was just not ready to understand and accept and be open to appreciate the differences that we each bring to the world.
Yeah, I think I understand that. Like we fear what is different from us because we just don't understand.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a lot to say about what we absorb as kids. We absorb values and behaviors from the adults that surround us. Yeah, when I was younger, there was no one like myself being a role model, for example. A lot of people were being made fun of, and the world has changed dramatically in the last 50 years when it comes to what we consider nowadays being acceptable behavior and politically correct and respectful. People used to make fun of disabilities, to make fun of anything that we would consider horrifying nowadays. But it was pretty much normal behavior back then.
Is that what drove you to medicine, or was it something else?
Something else, I was 16 years old and I had a pneumothorax. I ended up in hospital 3 times in the space of 1 year. And I was obviously quite scared. I went under different procedures to try and bring my lung back up. And what really, on
Like
one side, I was really curious.
how did
Yeah,
the pneumothorax happen? Was it from a bullying?
spontaneous.
Oh, and what were you feeling at that time?
The first time it was really interesting because it happened while I was in church with my family. I suddenly felt a stabbing pain in my chest. And yeah, what was going through my mind was a mixture of what's going on. There's something physically wrong with me. And obviously being in church thinking, is there a signal that there's something wrong with me? Am I being targeted and punished? Your mind races to places. But yeah, it's what really brought me to appreciate medicine was being in hospital for several days as an inpatient and coming into contact with lots of different figures, in particular nurses, taking very good care of me, trying to be the kind, consoling presence that I really needed. I didn't find at the time a lot of consolation, explanation, and understanding from the doctors that were treating me. So I was left quite disappointed. There was a lack of human touch. There was a lack of explanations. Nobody understood or could tell me why it had happened. Was I at risk for that to happen again? What I could have done to prevent it? It did really affect my life for a number of years because I was left with this uncertainty about maybe it's a good idea that you don't take a plane, don't go up on a mountain, don't go scuba diving. And I limited myself for a long time out of fear because there was this big question mark. Am I at risk? Am I gonna die on a plane if I ever take a flight? And there's no medical help on board. So it started making me wanting to be also in that environment, to be able to do it differently. And I sounds a bit arrogant, but I thought, yeah, I probably would be able to be more compassionate, to be more human, and maybe to provide more understanding. Sometimes having a laugh with a person and downplay their fears can go a long while. It can help a lot. That's what I needed when I was 16 and very scared and having a tube inserted in my chest, pushed against the wall. It was the old-fashioned Argyle drain, like a lance that gets shoved into your chest with a lot of pushing, and yeah, it was quite scary.
Well, because we actually do that in the emergency, but being on that receiving end and you're still conscious and having that tube pushed into you, that must have been scary.
Yeah, it wasn't the worst thing happened to me. Years later, the third time I had a pneumothorax, I ended up being prepared for a thoracoscopy procedure. And while I was on the table waiting for the procedure to happen, I went into ventricular tachycardia. And everybody panicked and they started asking me, how you feel? And I felt faint and my ears were buzzing. And everybody ran out to find an anesthetist and a cardiologist and to stop the procedure. And again, another big uncertainty. There was nothing wrong with my heart. It was probably just the amount of stress and adrenaline and hormones that just triggered my heart. And it went completely bizarre. Again, nobody had an explanation. So I knew after that experience, there was something wrong with my lungs. There was something wrong with my heart. I felt a bit like being let down by my own body. I felt like a failure. Not only I don't have friends, everybody's judging me. Now even my body's giving up on me. It was quite a hard time. Back then, music was my outlet. You see my piano on the back. I still carry it around with me where I live. And yeah, it was a way to express my feelings and reconnect with my inner turmoil and let it out in a healthy way.
That's very interesting. What you said, like make sure that's a way to let all this out. If not, it might present as another ventricular tachycardia.
Yes, it happened again when I was in medical school. I ended up noticing that my pulse was irregular while I was on a bike exercising, and I ended up having an ECG, runs of VT. To cut it short, I ended up having an ablation that lasted for about 4 hours. And the person that was doing it just at some point was frustrated that it didn't work. The arrhythmias kept appearing on the screen, and I was there awake again, having my heart microwaved, and it hurts. I know exactly what a heart attack feels like because it's really scary and painful. But after 4 hours of trying, it just took all the equipment, threw it down on my chest, said, F it, it doesn't work, and walked out of the room. And again, shock. Thought, what's going on? You're leaving me like this. What kind of behavior is that? You don't see me as a human being. You have no idea how that is affecting me. You just walk out and saying, it didn't work. And then on top of that, they forged the procedure report as successful, but unfortunately the arrhythmia came back and they wanted me to go back for a second procedure. And thanks God, my mom told them to get lost and never call me again. I found out years later that I never needed that procedure. I contacted different specialists. They said I wouldn't have done it. Stop taking all medications. Your heart is fine. Concentrate on finishing your medical studies and enjoy your life. And that was the best advice I could get.
So, a couple of things when you were on the table, when the specialist was doing that ablation, did it ever occur to you that, oh, maybe I might die here right now?
Yeah, yeah, probably wasn't the point I was the closest to death in my life, but yeah, I thought about that. I knew that there was a risk, for example, of perforating the heart and having a tamponade. I was even more aware because I was halfway through my medical studies. I was looking at the monitor, looking at all these ectopics and MVTs and seeing the effect. So I was heavily engaged in what was going on. I understood perfectly that it didn't work. And yeah, maybe I should have spoken up at the time when everything happened. But to be honest, at that time, all I wanted was to forget about it and get out and leave that experience behind, move on. Sometimes trying to make something right isn't your priority at that time. You think about it in retrospect.
Have you had any episodes since then?
Nope. I mean, for a few years, I did until somebody told me, yeah, your heart is fine. Just relax and be well. And it literally disappeared. So I strongly believe the mind is so powerful over our bodies to an extent that we sometimes don't fully appreciate, even as doctors. We've experienced it, we see it in our patients, but still the values and the education that we receive is very much in denial of that part, is very much focusing on the look at the anatomy, look at the biochemistry, look at the physiology. How about everything else that is going on in life? That has a massive impact as well. We live it on our skin, we live it in our lives as individuals. And then sometimes we forget when it comes to assessing other individuals. We restrict our awareness.
Do you think our training has failed us in that way? Because what you're saying is something I can relate to, because whenever we get a patient, I do my clocking, I come to a diagnosis, like all the differentials, the mind is probably the last thing or ever even on the list of differentials, because we are always taught, is it organic? Is it organic? Is there a structural problem? Is it biochemistry? All of this stuff. So do you think our training has failed us in some ways?
Well, it depends. Not all of us, and it certainly serves a purpose. And when we are in a high pressure, high demand system, we want efficiency, want to, uh, and, I work in acute medicine, so at the forefront of the hospital. So people come to us with uh, sometimes life and death situations, and we need to start from that. We start from what could kill you, what could be massively wrong with you. I want to understand what's going on, and then you walk your way down through priorities. And to be honest, sometimes we don't have the time. We simply don't have the time to be so detailed, and it's sad. Sometimes all you need to do is to let patients talk and open up and try to approach them as another human being with a smile, making I don't know, making some jokes and relate as another person. Very often they open up and tell you a lot that they haven't told other doctors. It's beautiful to observe, and it's very helpful to come to a diagnosis. Sometimes you just need to listen.
Before we dive back into this incredible conversation, there are a couple of exciting opportunities with disruptive doctors that I want to share with you guys. First, if you're a doctor who's thinking about moving into a non-clinical career but don't know where to start, or even if you're a doctor who's on the fence thinking if you should leave medicine or stay, the non-clinical career pathfinder by disruptive doctors is designed specifically for you. The problem why we doctors think that there's no opportunities for us out there is because we've been trained in sick care all our lives, but that's not true. Healthcare is a huge ocean. What you learn in this workshop is discovering yourself, where to find all the opportunities within healthcare, your game plan, and insights from me and Vivek on how to do it. And the best part is it comes with a 14-day guarantee. By the end of this workshop, you gain so much clarity on what you need to do, or if staying in medicine or leaving for non-clinical practice is for you. Our proven framework has helped more than 1,000 doctors on finding a fulfilling career. So stop wasting your time trying to figure it out all on your own in the dark. So sign up for our next workshop on our website. Next, mark your calendar for Disruptive Doctors Annual Conference and Exhibition. It's happening this 20th and 21st of September. This conference isn't about fitting into label. It's about expanding what is possible in healthcare and reimagining the doctor's role in it. This is where forward-thinking doctors come together to drive real change in healthcare. For those who refuse to settle, this flagship event brings together doctors from diverse backgrounds to explore fresh approaches, share ideas, and connect with a community of doctors to impact healthcare differently. Remember to get your tickets on our website at disruptive-doctors.com/conference 2025. And finally, if you haven't already, please download the Disruptive Doctors app. It is a global hub where you can connect, collaborate, share experiences with doctors across the globe, and you don't have to be limited by geography. This is more than an app. It's a movement. So be part of the community of doctors who are impacting healthcare differently. And also, can you do me a huge favor? If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please be sure to subscribe, because it's subscribers like you that help us bring better guests for you. So whether it's the workshop, the conference, the app, or just subscribing to the channel, be sure to do it now. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Okay, so you've gone through medical school and you had all these near-death experiences. And now that, after that, you finally become a doctor, do you think, was it everything that you imagined it to be?
No, it was, I got to a point where I had fully trained. I got to another country, trained again, went through the mill, worked my way from being an unpaid observer and doing unpaid research for months to finally being the boss, being a consultant, in the case of the attending physician. And I thought, okay, now the game changes, and I was expecting it to be better. New anxieties, new challenges arrived. And I started noticing that I didn't have that degree of freedom and decision-making power that I wish could have to better help my patients, be more present, and support my trainees, support colleagues. It was just the start of another journey of new challenges, but really not what I assumed medicine would have been. At the very beginning of my journey, when I was still thinking about applying to medical school, I came across some doctors that told me very directly, don't do it. The profession is in a shambles. It's really hard. We are all frustrated. We are tired. It's chaotic, you name it. And one of them told me, well, if you still want to do it, they still great need for good doctors. So just be a good doctor. And I assumed it's just them. There's something wrong with them. They are bitter and frustrated. They are in the wrong environment. They had some bad career choices. I didn't think that there was going to be such a pervasive struggle with most doctors. Nowadays, I know, because I talk to a lot of doctors and meet them, and most of us feel pretty much the same, a bit disillusioned and fed up and angry about the situation. We know it could be different. We see it, we imagine it, we have ideas how it could be different, but the reality is sometimes much harder.
How could it be different?
For example, if we had the right support, if we could just flag up, there's something here that isn't working, can we fix it and find a solution? It's very simple things that I believe most people would assume we are capable of doing. I think patients have no idea. They look at us and think, okay, yeah, I'm sure if you notice there is something not functioning in your hospital, in your clinic, in your booking system, in your appointments being delayed and cancelled, in the amount of doctors that you have available, you would notice and fix it. The reality is it's so difficult and so out of our control. But we are the ones that then get the blame. We are the ones facing people that are angry, tired, that have been waiting for hours and hours, that didn't get a proper answer, couldn't speak to anyone, couldn't get through a telephone line to speak with a human being. The moment you face them, before you get to talking to them and making a diagnosis, you have to absorb all their anger and frustration and emotional turmoil. It becomes really difficult after a while.
That's basically us being at the front line, would you say? Like the front line of receiving all of this.
Yes.
Okay, what? Sorry, go on.
I was just saying, nobody prepares you for that. There's going to be the occasional person that will be a bit too uninhibited or a bit offensive, but it's becoming more and more the norm.
Yeah, I remember when I was still a junior doctor and I was posted to the emergency medicine. Uh, it's actually one of the scariest places. If you're going to compare the entire hospital, that's probably the scariest places because you'll get a psychiatric patient coming in there and they want to attack you and you have to subdue them. And it's so scary. And I'm so small and I have to work with my friend on how you're going to catch this person so I can subdue them. Or even if there was an accident or a fight and there'll be all these gangs and thugs that come into the ED and they're going to the red zone where you're resuscitating somebody else. And even the guards or the police are quite powerless in some of these instances. And you really have to just watch your back because you don't know when any of this are just going to just attack a doctor or your colleagues or you.
Yeah, and typically you don't feel safe. And what I think is really an imbalance in power is what is expected of us is to be always kind, always be understanding, and always try to de-escalate anger. When somebody is coming at you, trying to punch you, running after you with a knife, with a gun, I would love to see these experts in conflict resolution being there and doing it themselves. You can't do it all the time. Our instincts are very powerful. Our self-defense mechanisms, our animalistic instincts need to kick in. It's a life and death situation. Sometimes you can't expect just to be there and say, "Sir, please be kind." Sometimes you just have to run, or you have to fight back and defend yourself. But the big risk is you're going to be blamed. You're going to be blamed because it's not professional, because it's not the behavior that is accepted and expected of you by the profession. And those standards are set up very often by people that are not doctors, don't work in that situation, will never find themselves in that situation, sit comfortably in an office, writing a beautiful 200-page document on about what it's meant to be like being a doctor and what are the professional standards. And I'm sorry, you cannot tell all of us how to behave when you haven't been walking a mile in our shoes.
Have you had any personal experience that you encountered that you felt unsafe at work?
Yes, I have been chased by angry families that were upset by the loss of their relative, and they went after me, blaming me for having discussed and explained the do not resuscitate decision days and days before. The law is very clear. It's a medical decision. We are required to inform families about it. If there is a disagreement, we get a second opinion. So two senior clinicians, if they are in agreement about the fact that it is not indicated and it would be counterproductive and just prolong suffering or create more damage, the decision is made. But then that doesn't protect us from the expectations. Very often we are left alone, and I found myself being cornered in a room with someone that wanted to punch me. And thanks God there were some nurses in a room nearby that called security, and they turned up at the right time. But yeah, I wish I had a way to protect myself. brought up the incident afterwards, asking my hospital, can we please install panic buttons in these rooms that have no exit and where we are in an office? And they decided that no, because there was no budget and we already had panic buttons in the nursing stations. So
How did you feel when they said no to your requests for you feeling safe at work?
I was very angry. I thought, what is it about the value of my life and my safety that you don't understand? What's the cost of putting two wires and a plastic button in a room that is too much to ask to make me feel safe at work? I still haven't given up on the idea, and I still think, yeah, that this decision making doesn't make any sense, and it's such a small thing that we could do to make us feel safer. We carry a badge that on the back has all the numbers to call in case there is an emergency. One of them is security. But again, if you have a very angry person that is running after you, cornering you in a room, you don't really have the opportunity to find a telephone line and dial a number and wait for them to respond and say, yes, I am in this room and this person is about to kill me. Again, you need something to act quickly.
I do resonate. I mean, I know what it feels like because, like I said, when I was in the emergency department, there was thugs that came and we called security. I think the security was outnumbered, so they didn't show up. I think we only had 2 policemen on duty that time, and there were like 10 thugs in the emergency. So maybe they came, I saw, and they thought, okay, there's no way I can control this.
But
Like
still, that's really upsetting that it's their job. I don't care if you're outnumbered and those people look scary. I'm even more powerless than you. I didn't have training. First of all, I'm not allowed because I'm a doctor, and there are organizations that hold me hostage by having licensing power. So I'm at risk of losing my income, my source of living, if I act in self-defense, paradoxically. And I don't have any weapons. I don't even have a baton or a taser. So I think some security that doesn't show up when they are required, they should be sacked. Get out of security, get out of other people. That's not an appropriate response.
Yeah. Do you feel that we've been tasked to do a lot more, but we've not been empowered to be able to perform at our best?
Totally. I think in every profession, if you're expected to do something, whether if you're self-employed, you buy your tools, you bring them where you need them. If you're employed, they give you the tools of your trade, and they empower you. As doctors, more and more there is this expectation that you need to do so much more on top of clinical medicine. But even for clinical medicine, we want you to be productive and see this number of patients per day. But then when the patient arrives, they spend half of their time complaining and moaning about and being angry about the inefficiencies of the system, which you have no control over. You use your technological tools, simple a computer, keyboard and mouse that works. And half of the time, those things are broken, they crash, they slow, they are 10 years old, they no longer work. And you think, how do you expect me to be efficient and to be able to do my work at the best? And then simple things like having a place to rest, having an office, having some administrative or secretarial support. All these things have disappeared bit by bit. Doctors no longer have a place to rest, where to sit down and have a meal without being surrounded by chaos and people always demanding something from you. We end up eating somewhere very, very often in front of our computer. So you never really stop. You're reading your emails while you're having a meal. It has become quite.
Why do you think we've came to this kind of situation?
I believe by losing power bit by bit. It's been designed. If I look back when I was younger, doctors were the majority. They were running hospitals, doctors and nurses. There were very few administrators here and there, just dealing with administrative tasks like bookkeeping and reporting. And more, the culture became we need to cut the costs. If we leave doctors running everything, they will always spend more, get the best equipment, get the latest fancy tool that they can get the most expensive drug. We need to control this. And the idea of control and bureaucracy and getting data, extracting data created more and more structures, more and more control. And we are now at the end of this journey where you can't even buy a pencil without having 5 people signing off on that. Very often, the pencil that you buy can only be bought by a certain provider, and it costs 100 times more than if you went to a shop or you bought it online. It has become a lot of nonsense. But maybe we need to go back a little bit and strike a better balance. By all means, healthcare nowadays is very complex. We can't do it alone, and there's no need to do it alone. But the distribution of decision making and powers and how we make decisions could be so much different. But very often the people that are in charge of making decisions nowadays not only do not have all the experience. They're not clinical, so they don't fully understand certain aspects of what their decisions would have an effect on. But they very often don't get feedback. And so we are at the forefront. We have so much understanding and knowledge. In my book, I make a parallel between the nervous system in the body and in an organization. If you have administrators being the brain of the organism, we are the peripheral sensors, where the peripheral nerves, we know what's going on the shop floor with patients. We understand, we see the effect of every little decision. We can feed back all that information. It would be so powerful to have good decision making. But if you don't implement that channel of communication, you will carry on making unwise decisions, and we will be disconnected.
I can completely understand that, because you know what I find what I find amusing is that we're on opposite ends of the world, two different healthcare system. I mean, although our healthcare does follow the NHS, but two different healthcare system. Everything you're saying is everything we're going through here as well. The pencils being 100 times more expensive is true here as well. How the decision makers are people who have no idea what it's like being on the front lines, have no idea what patient care is, have no idea what the flow of how you're managing a patient, and they're making all those decisions. Actually, I've mentioned this a couple of times. Like when I was once working in the ICU, you know, in the ICU, you have this huge 24-hour charts. There's a reason why it's a huge 24-hour chart. So you can see the whole human body, everything that's happening and how they're happening in relation to each other. I think I'm not sure whose bright idea it was, but definitely from administration side, they decided to buy a software for the ICU where it digitizes the entire chart. And that chart was broken into 20 on the screen. So I remember that, and I was just thinking, why are we using this? This is terrible. I remember complaining to my boss because I just joined that hospital, and he said, it's been paid for. We just need to use it.
Yep.
And it was so dangerous because when we actually had a patient that collapsed. She collapsed and nobody knew what was going on because there was no chart. Everyone had to stop what they were doing. We all had to grab a PC so that we can piece those frames together and tell like what exactly happened to her. Like we couldn't tell it in a second. We couldn't look at the chart and say, oh, she received this and she probably had a reaction to this and that's why this is happening. We couldn't do any of that.
You cannot spot trends because you no longer have all the information in a snapshot where it's needed. But so often I see that time and time again. So at the end, bad decision was choosing that piece of software without consulting anyone that would have been using it, which is very, very typical. But also, if I look at the whole chain, who designed that software like that? Why did they design it like that? And very often, when you work with, I've been involved in designing some hospital software in my journey in different hospitals, and the people that write the code, they need a lot of input from us. We need to be there and telling them exactly how to write it and what the output needs to be like and what the implication is to do it in a certain way or in a different way. If we let them do it, it will work well, maybe because they're thinking about optimizing the view on a screen or the input on a keyboard, but they don't think about how we use it and what we want to get out of it. For example, for a chart like that, we don't need to see the numbers, we need to see the trends. It would be enough if we saw a wave over time. We don't need to be able to read the numbers. Then you can open up another chart where you have more information. But without us, it's going to be something unproductive and full of unwanted consequences.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about let's go back a bit about your journey. Like you went into acute medicine. Firstly, I guess, what is it? Is it the same as ICU, or is it emergency medicine, or is it something else altogether? And
It's
how did you
internal
get, like,
medicine.
I see, it's internal
It's internal
medicine.
medicine practice at the front of the hospital. Every country calls it differently. In Italy, we call it acute urgent medicine. Here, it's acute medicine in the UK. I believe something similar in the US would be being a hospitalist. But basically, it's been an internal medicine, a physician seeing patients first, either directly in the emergency department or after they've been assessed and stabilized by the emergency department, but also in day hospitals, medical day hospitals. We call them same-day emergency care units. It's a new brand of ambulatory care. We also see patients for short stay for the first 48, 72 hours to we're the ones that make diagnosis and start treatment. And occasionally, when a patient requires a specialist, then we get the coordinate the input of different specialties.
What made you decide to go into acute medicine?
I started training in internal medicine. So for the first 3 years, I was in cardiology, internal medicine, gastroenterology departments. And then at some point, I remember clearly, a cardiac arrest happened while I was on my own on a Sunday doing a ward round without my boss. He was covering was a stroke consultant on call. And by the time he came back from the stroke call, I was doing CPR on a patient. He was shocked because it almost never happened anyway. I remember going back home after that day and feeling strangely energized, as if, okay, I've done something different. I've done something useful. I've done something I would like to be more prepared about. And I made the decision to ask to be transferred to the emergency department. So the next year, I started training in the emergency department. And the beginning, I had no idea how I would have reacted. Did I gamble with it? Was I in the wrong place? And I remember the first week when I saw my first big incident. I was just observing, standing back and looking at all the excitement. The patient arrived after being in an accident. A tractor had toppled over, and this gentleman had to be extricated and brought to A&E, and everybody started immediately working on them and the surgeons, my colleagues, nurses. While I was standing back and observing and trying to understand what's going on, how we approach this, a paramedic arrives carrying a big orange bag, and he approaches me and says, Doctor, where do I put it? Where do I put it? And I look at it and I ask, what is that? The leg. Quick thinking. It needs to go on ice. For sure, we don't have enough ice for a whole leg. What do I do? I stood back and I waited for a good moment to ask my boss. I said, sorry to interrupt. The leg has arrived. What do you want me to do? I said, well, just ask them to put it on the floor. I don't think this man is going to survive. It's too late. I thought, okay, fine. I can deal with that. Just that moment of decision making, I thought, oh, is it going to be like this every day? How am I going to cope with such a amount of pressure and wild emotions? And thanks God it's not like that every day, but you quickly develop your resilience. You learn how to manage your emotions. And it's completely different than, for example, being involved into looking after someone you care for that is in the same situation. My first experience of cardiac arrest was with my great aunt. She was like a second mom to me. And one day she collapsed in the bathroom, and she basically had a cardiac arrest, and she don't know what to do. And she had the second one in front of my eyes at the hospital. You feel completely out of your depth when you don't know what to do. You don't know your protocols, your ABCD, your algorithms. Knowing what to do brings you that clarity of mind where you just concentrate on what you're doing, you feel useful, emotions are aside, you're not affected, you can act, you can be useful. And I had to learn all of that in A&E the hard way.
Yeah, a lot of us, I mean, at least here in Malaysia, that's how we're learning emergency medicine. It's just thrown there. I remember a case. Maybe I had 2 years of experience, not entirely in emergency medicine, just rotating around. I was still in my junior training time. I was in emergency. I was in the red zone, and it was a busy night. It was bad. Like, we had an accident, so I had only one. I was a house officer, meaning I'm still junior, and I had my medical officer who is actually supposed to be in charge of that place. She had a patient coming, and then a patient came in. It was probably a fight with machete. So he had a split jaw, like it went straight down. It was open, and his tongue was out. It was bloody, and that was my case. And I looked at it as I froze. I literally was like, what do I do here? Like, I don't know. He's still alive. He's still
Yeah.
awake. His tongue was just flapping because he was trying to check what's going on.
Mhm.
And here I am. I just stood there. I froze. And then all of a sudden, I heard my boss shouting, ABC, ABC. And then I was like, okay, yeah. Okay,
Yes.
ABC.
Yeah, nothing prepares you for the wild world of A&E. It's not written in any book. That's the difficult thing that I find. You mentioned our medical training. First of all, we spend so much time learning about all the physiology, all the diseases, all everything, and then you're thrown into a world where people don't come with a diagnosis. They don't come with a disease. They come with symptoms, and you need to reverse engineering or everything that you have learned to start from the symptoms and ask the right questions and get to plan the right tests and bit by bit get information and make a diagnosis. That in itself, it requires a lot of brain power and a lot of mental skills because you have to figure out on your own. There aren't a lot of at least when I trained, there was no training about how to get to that degree of making a good diagnosis. You observe other people doing it, and you fish for information in your brain, and you figure it out. But then, what people come up with in A&E is not in any textbooks. I mean, yes, there's the occasional description of this kind of injury, that kind of injury, but it cannot possibly cover every single type of injury from multiple possible possibilities. You really have to figure it out and in the moment. And yeah, it's very easy to feel unprepared and out of place. And I think it's completely normal. It's human. Sometimes when we are at the beginning of our journey, we make it about us. I'm a bad doctor. I don't know enough. I'm not prepared. I'm not brave enough. I feel shocked looking at this, but to be honest, it happens to all of us.
Do you still feel like that? Like, are there still cases that comes and you feel like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on. I feel like I'm unprepared or I've not read enough. Do you still feel that?
Yeah, not so often. Experience goes a long way to make you feel more prepared and have you concentrate more on what you're going to do and then try to connect all the dots and make sense of what's going on. But yeah, very often it still happens that you observe all the numbers, all the blood test results, and the physical science, and what you know from the history of a patient, and it quite doesn't make sense. So you start making hypotheses. Is it a single disease? Is there more than one thing going on? Could it be this? Could it be that? Need more information, more tests. You need to see how they respond to a treatment. And sometimes you have to choose multiple treatments in parallel. You will never know which one is working, but you just cover all the bases just in case. And sometimes you have to make the hard choice when one treatment would produce one result and another treatment is the opposite effect, and you need to make an informed guess based on probability and say and share the decision making with the patient and the family. Say, yes, this is not certain. I don't have a test to have a precision measurement of what this is and how it's going to work. At the moment, sometimes you just have to base your decision on probabilities and hope for the best and see how people improve.
Before we dive back into this incredible conversation, there are a couple of exciting opportunities with disruptive doctors that I want to share with you guys. First, if you're a doctor who's thinking about moving into a non-clinical career but don't know where to start, or even if you're a doctor who's on the fence thinking if you should leave medicine or stay, the non-clinical career pathfinder by disruptive doctors is designed specifically for you. The problem why we doctors think that there's no opportunities for us out there is because we've been trained in sick care all our lives, but that's not true. Healthcare is a huge ocean. What you learn in this workshop is discovering yourself, where to find all the opportunities within healthcare, your game plan, and insights from me and Vivek on how to do it. And the best part is it comes with a 14-day guarantee. By the end of this workshop, you gain so much clarity on what you need to do, or if staying in medicine or leaving for non-clinical practice is for you. Our proven framework has helped more than 1,000 doctors on finding a fulfilling career. So stop wasting your time trying to figure it out all on your own in the dark. So sign up for our next workshop on our website. Next, mark your calendar for Disruptive Doctors Annual Conference and Exhibition. It's happening this 20th and 21st of September. This conference isn't about fitting into label. It's about expanding what is possible in healthcare and reimagining the doctor's role in it. This is where forward-thinking doctors come together to drive real change in healthcare. For those who refuse to settle, this flagship event brings together doctors from diverse backgrounds to explore fresh approaches, share ideas, and connect with a community of doctors to impact healthcare differently. Remember to get your tickets on our website at disruptive-doctors.com/conference 2025. And finally, if you haven't already, please download the Disruptive Doctors app. It is a global hub where you can connect, collaborate, share experiences with doctors across the globe, and you don't have to be limited by geography. This is more than an app, it's a movement. So be part of the community of doctors who are impacting healthcare differently. And also, can you do me a huge favor? If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please be sure to subscribe, because it's subscribers like you that help us bring better guests for you. So whether it's the workshop, the conference, the app, or just subscribing to the channel, be sure to do it now. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Okay, so working in acute medicine obviously is very intense. Like you said, sometimes all these decision makings that you have to do. What are the worst, like what was the worst day for you, like in your entire career? What do you think was one of the worst days in acute medicine?
I think clinically, probably there isn't a single day where I would have said, oh my God, this is a nightmare. I think it's the accumulation of small things that go wrong, small things that could have been done differently, small things that you see affect patient journeys, dissatisfaction, how as doctors are affected, and seeing, for me, I think what has struck me the most was seeing young, talented colleagues giving up really early in their careers and saying, this is too much. I'm going to work somewhere else. I'm going to work in the pharma industry. I'm going to work as a sales representative. I'm going to work in my father's shop. I'm going to do something, but not medicine. Very often, these were incredibly good doctors. They would have been people that I would have trusted with my life. And seeing them giving up just broke my heart, thinking how do we allow this to happen? Losing talent, breaking someone to the point that they feel that that's the only solution, just quitting. It's beyond repair. It's beyond us being able to offer support and being a mentor and looking at finding a better life-work balance. It's nearly the ultimate point. And obviously, I've seen some people committing suicide as well. When I was out of medical school, I heard about a colleague that during the first year of the residency took their life. A couple of years ago, a former trainee, not while they were working with us, but shortly after, took their own life. I heard about it, and yeah, my heart sank. We come across so many people. It's such a dynamic job. We sometimes you share a few shifts with someone. You really don't get to know them well. You review a few patients after a night shift, after a weekend, during a day on call. You meet this person 4 or 5 times in a year. You hardly know their name, but you know very well their face. You've been there at the front line. You've been exposed to a lot of stress. You cared for patients together, and then you hear they committed suicide. You feel powerless when that happens because you think, okay, I know I didn't have any role into what caused that, but could have had a positive role if I had the right resources. If we had I don't know, a time to share together, where to share a meal and sit down and talk about what has happened during the day before we go home. Back in the days, I used to share a lot more time with my colleagues. We used to go to the canteen together and have a meal, stop for a break and have a coffee, and someone smoking a cigarette in front of the coffee machine outside. A&E and having a laugh, going out for a dinner. And nowadays, all of that seems to disappear more and more. We are so rushed. We are so individualistic. The communal spaces have disappeared. The administrations have transformed every corner of the hospital into some kind of functional space. And then they pretend to care for us by offering a yoga class or a Zumba class or a meditation app, saying that's for your well-being. That was one of the things that motivated me to write a book about solutions. I think true well-being is about addressing the causes. Like in medicine, before you choose palliative care and only look after the symptoms, you try to find the root cause of the disease, and you try to either influence on how it is playing in the body or just fix it. It's an infection, use an antibiotic, kill the bug. And so often when it comes to our lives as doctors, we are offered palliative care solutions. Yeah, go and meditate. Paradoxically, back in the day, he was heavily I was training into meditation and healing while I was towards the end of my training in acute medicine. So my argument was, I do meditation. I can teach meditation. I teach people how to meditate. I do yoga. I have a healthy lifestyle. I eat organic food. I exercise, and I'm still stressed and angry, and I'm so frustrated. This is not a solution. This is taking the mickey. This is ticking a box and saying, we pretend to care about you, but you really don't. That's why we need to speak up and say what we need.
What do you think is the root cause?
I believe that frustrations escalate if they are not mitigated, if they're not addressed. So every day you go to work and you have your computer system that doesn't work and slows you down, your patients languishing for hours in a corridor, hours or days without proper care. You have your colleagues completely stressed without any help. The workload doesn't match the resources and the workforce. The decision making goes against common sense. You try to make arguments about what would make sense. You present sensible data and calculations, and they are ignored. All of that escalates. We are not built like pressure cookers with to store an infinite amount of pressure inside. At some point, either you open a valve and let the steam out, or some kind of explosion goes on. I believe stress, burnout, eventually it happens to all of us despite the best intentions. And it then can also escalate further. If you have a predisposition to develop mental health issues, that's a very fertile ground. And, we very well know that suicide is quite high in the medical profession. and it is increasing. More and more people are leaving the medical profession. I myself migrated to another country, hoping that it would have been different, that it would have been less painful. Some people try to move multiple times. We move from job to job. All these are signals that there is a deep problem with the profession. There's a deep problem of what we are trying to ignore and not fix.
I completely, like I said again, even though we are across the ocean, like you're on the opposite side of the world, so many things that you've mentioned, like we are also going through that. Like I did lose a colleague to suicide. It was very shocking because he was the one of the nicest person. I mean, I wasn't very happy when he does surgery because it's always 2 times the time he tells me that the surgery is going to go on, right? I would always like complain about that, but he was one of the nicest guys. Like he doesn't bully. He's very polite. He's so nice, and it was so shocking for me to hear that he took his own life. Like he checked himself in the hotel. Obviously, he was posted to anesthesia, so he knew how to switch off. Like
How to do it properly.
successfully, yes. So yeah, I wasn't there to identify. They called a few colleagues to go and identify his body and all, and they saw how he knew how to insert the lines, knew what drugs to give, and it was just so seamless, and he looked peaceful from what I hear. But that was so sad just listening to it. And I've also had a friend who was bullied very badly when she moved to another hospital. She was bullied by her specialist in the department for not knowing how to handle certain cases, because she was in anesthesia with me for a long time and suddenly she was in internal medicine. So she had to relearn everything and she was a little slow. So she got bullied so badly in front of ward rounds, every ward round being shamed because she doesn't know what to do, even though she's a senior doctor. It drove her to depression. She started having suicidal ideation, but it's a good thing she caught it early and she had to take a break. I've not heard from her for a long time, so I have no idea what happened to her, like how she progressed and all. And even for myself, like when I had a slip disc, I was so certain I was going to be an intensivist. But when I had a slip disc, my bosses in this hospital were not very supportive. I asked for a 3 months light duty, just sit in clinic, let me recuperate. I don't want to carry patient. I don't want to do CPR. I just don't want to hurt myself even more. The only response that my boss gave me was, I don't think you have a future in medicine anymore. And maybe it's time for you to leave. And that's exactly what I did. I just laughed. I mean, looking back, if I really wanted it, I guess I could have still pursued it in other means, but I was just so exhausted that I thought, okay, this is my ticket out. I'm just going to leave. And I did. I left the practicing. I'm no longer practicing. And looking back, I guess there's bits of me that misses it, but I think there's a lot of me that actually love what I'm doing now.
It's important, and we all have different paths, and yeah, doesn't necessarily mean that getting out of medicine is a failure. But I think that there are many problems with the culture in medicine, and they didn't change at the same speed in every country. When I was training in Italy, bullying was still quite common practice, so I went through quite a bit of that. And when I arrived in the UK, in certain hospitals, especially big teaching hospitals full of people with big egos, feeling very important and entitled, I observed that to become practice to shame people and, yeah, publicly shaming and unnecessarily. We know that, for example, for learning purposes, you will learn and remember more things that are associated to an emotional status. But we are very good at having those emotions on our own when we are at the front line. We care about patients. We are committed to learning and understanding and doing it better. There's no need for someone to come and make you feel inadequate, making you feel less than them. That tells me a lot more about them, about their own journey, their own values. And I'm glad to see that those people, bit by bit, are fewer and fewer. But unfortunately, there's still quite a lot of them in healthcare. There's quite a lot of discrimination still going on. There's quite a lot of power play, quite a lot of personal interests. It's not perfect, it's not fixed. And I think there's sometimes something to say about also how we react to that. We can't always be the strong person and be the one standing up to everything and be the hero. But I think more and more of us need to stop living in fear. If we are in a fear-based culture where we quite never speak up, because if you do, you'll be blamed, you'll be sidetracked, you will not make a career. Somebody will try to stop you. You're at risk of being fired. Your license is at stake. All these things. I have observed so many people just being paralyzed and suffering in silence. And speaking up sometimes gives you a lot of freedom. It comes with a price. I've been that person many times. I have to say, you need to get into a position where you can do it. You need to. It's like betting. It's like I can bet that the outcome is going to be good and positive because I know that I have a solid foundation. For example, I am a bloody good doctor. I know I have my knowledge on my side. I have become indispensable for this organization. You can't get rid of me or replace me easily. That allows me to speak up without fearing for my job. I know that there aren't many like me around. Before trying to get rid of me, you think twice. That gives me the power to speak up. And I think sometimes we have to be that person to be able to stand up against the bullying, to stand up against the abuse and so on. We can't let it all happen, because if it happens today to your colleague, it will happen tomorrow to someone else, and it might affect them even worse.
How can junior doctors speak up? Like just what you mentioned. I know you're saying you should build up some sort of foundation for yourself before you speak up. But the ones that are suffering the most, the ones that are going through this the most, the ones that are on the receiving end are mostly the junior doctors. So how can they effectively speak up?
Power also comes from numbers. And for example, here in the UK, junior doctors have gained a lot more power than senior doctors because they are all represented by, well, they haven't been divided yet. They haven't been divided in specialties. Oh, you're a surgeon, a physician, a gynecologist. You're represented by this body, that body, that body. The more we're separated, the less we count. It don't matter. But power from numbers means that if everyone decides to, for example, strike, stop working, they can obtain quite a lot. I remember when I was a junior doctor in Italy, we were paid very, very little. I think we were paid 500 euros a month, something like that. It was incredible. And for 5 years, we went on strike. We went on strike continuously for a whole month. Immediately, the government decided to double our salary overnight. Here in the UK, junior doctors went on strike. They got better working conditions. They got a contract that includes a lot more balance into the working hours, the rest periods, the total amount of hours, and night shifts, and so on. They are entitled to days and times that are dedicated to learning as opposed to providing clinical care. So they sometimes it goes through a negotiation. Sometimes it goes through a little bit of a battle, but it is worth it. And sometimes we just need to find someone else that isn't a lie, someone that is strong and secure and can do that fight for us. In the hospital, we rarely are alone. I know that sometimes the bullying happen behind closed doors. It's not always public, but you can find and ally someone that isn't scared to speak up.
Okay, in your book, you mentioned that you found yourself in this journey of yours, you found yourself becoming the kind of doctor that, a person that you were trying to avoid, grumpy, impatient, angry. Like, what was that all about?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, when I decided I want to be a doctor, I had that idea of aiming really high. to be better than some of the doctors I had observed during my teenage years. So I had high expectations of myself. I went to university and studied really, really hard. I had the highest degrees of my year. I graduated with amazing results, and I then stepped into the profession, hit the ground running, thinking gonna be amazing. And then reality hits you, and you start with the struggles, you start with strained relationships with colleagues, people trying to take advantage, people trying to um, hide information from you to make a career, all the nepotism that happens in certain environments. Move into clinical practice in the UK and be treated as a foreigner, an outsider, so being ignored for a good part of early part of my career, be looked down as someone that has less value and knows less just because I couldn't express all that I knew as proficiently and as clearly. All of that, plus the daily frustrations getting into clinical practice as a consultant, clinical lead, all the frustrations about decision making made about me without me. I started being the angry, frustrated person that I didn't want to be. The person that 20, 30 years before had told me, don't be a doctor. It's an awful, awful profession. It's in shambles and it will be really hard. It was an eye opener, but also a moment where I really questioned everything. I thought, what am I doing with my life? Is it how I want to live the rest of my life? Like this, disgruntled, angry, constantly fighting. And I started looking alternatives.
You wanted to leave?
Yeah. Yeah, I had come back from a few retreats. I went to yoga retreats and meditation retreats, and I learned Tantra with a school. I did a diploma for a few years. I had all these beautiful experiences of a completely different life where I was free, I was careless, I was happy. I didn't have to deal with all of that stuff at work. And I thought, wouldn't it be beautiful if I made that my life and I had a retreat place in a beautiful island and I could live by the sea and I could have people joining and spending good time together, doing some teaching and so on. So I started planning for that and looking up our places and looking up spiritual communities that already existed. I got to the point where I was introduced by my ex-partner to business and life coach. And I started talking about this project and we started working together. And bit by bit, I realized that I felt really inauthentic about it. It wasn't what I truly wanted. And I felt abandoning years and years of training and all the time and effort that I had dedicated to the profession felt like a failure and didn't feel like what I really wanted to do. It made me really stop and think, what do I want to do with my life? Do I really want to quit? Or is there something else I can do to change, but change for good, not just look for migrating to another country or trying to find the perfect job that doesn't exist. I've seen plenty of colleagues that keep moving from place to place to place to place, always thinking it's going to be better. And they always complain about pretty much the same. And yeah, you go across the ocean and you find someone that is going through similar problems. So I really thought we need to change the rules of the game. We need to do something about the medical profession. We can't let it become something unsustainable and that breaks every doctor that I know. Is not good for the future of medicine. Even as patients, we deserve doctors that are well in their own health, in their own mind, and they are at their best, at the best ability, capable of giving their best and look after us when we are in need.
What steps? I mean, you were already at the brink of thinking of leaving. and then you met a business and life coach. Was that the turning point that made you stop and think, no, actually, I still do want to practice medicine?
Yes, and it took me a long time to really clarify what I wanted to do about it. Because I didn't just wake up one day thinking, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write about my experiences. It took me time to first really reconnect with my original calling. Why did I decide to become a doctor? What made me choose this path? What do I want to achieve? And what are my values? What makes me wake up in the morning? What motivates me? So I did a lot of work and a lot of insight, a lot of reflection, a lot of writing, going into retreats before coming up with a vision for my future. And then another 7 days spent in a retreat. The way I came up with the idea for the book was right after COVID. You asked me earlier about one of my worst times in clinical practice, and it's probably been during the first COVID pandemic. We were starting to see the first few cases, and we ran out of PPE. Government decided to tell us not to use FP2 or FP3 masks anymore. They made up the story that COVID was transmitted through touch and surfaces and was not airborne. And I knew that was completely made up. Virology was part of my training, and coronaviruses didn't just come into existence yesterday. So I know it wasn't true. We were forced to wear surgical masks, and within 5 days, I had symptoms of COVID. I was told by the hospital administrators that I couldn't get tested because they had not started a program to test staff, that it would have started next week. And I thought, thank you very much, but I'm well today. What about this? And so no support. I had to go to a older colleague of mine in an emergency, and I told him, I think I have COVID. He gave me a swab. I went into the bathroom, swabbed myself, put it in a plastic bag. We sent it away, and it called me later in that day saying you tested positive. And I stayed home, scared for my life because I had already seen people dying. There was no treatment. Back then, it was the first that we came in contact with this disease. I live alone, and thanks God I had some friends that were well living nearby that could bring me groceries and some medications. And once I came back after a couple of weeks, I was still coughing and coughing. And again, administrators told me, you no longer have a fever, you're okay to come back, you're not contagious. And I asked a simple question, can I get tested again just to check for my patients and my colleagues? No, we don't do that. There's no recommendation. The government doesn't recommend that. Again, made up information. I come back to work and I choose to wear a mask to protect my colleagues and my patients. And I'm told off by administrators for wearing a mask in the corridor because I'm scaring patients and I'm not inspiring confidence. And I go to the canteen wearing a mask and I'm told to take it off because it's not allowed to wear masks in the canteen. So I suddenly start being really angry and frustrated about all this nonsense, all these imposed rules that go against everything I have learned in medical school that is being told and that is going to have an effect and is going to also affect well-being and lives of other doctors. I had some nurse colleagues that lost their lives during the first COVID wave. And I think, again, how about me? What is my role into this? I'm just another disposable cogwheel in this big machinery. And the moment I break, I will just be replaced and forgotten. It really made me think. And I booked a whole week to go away with my coach. And it started with me moaning a lot and just getting things off my chest about everything that was wrong with the medical profession. And Tony J. Salimi is my coach. He's a great man. I highly recommend him. He really has done a wonderful job to support me and throughout this journey. He invited me to write all these ideas on the walls, but not directly on the walls, on the plastic sheets, adhesive sheets. And at the end of the day, the whole room was filled with ideas. I realized that, and I started organizing them. I realized that I wasn't only looking at problems that we all share. I potentially had also learned over the years how to cope and strategize, and I could turn challenges into solutions and learning and something that I could teach and share with others. And I started seeing a glimpse of light. And I thought, there's something about it. How about you write a book for other doctors? And that's how the journey started.
Wow. So, I mean, there were so many things that you were saying that I think during COVID, it was probably the toughest time for all of us. I mean, especially if you gotten sick, and at that time there was no cure, no one knew what was going on, and people were dying left, right, center. It must have been very terrifying for you to go through all of that and not having that support, that support system. I mean, you're working there for the hospital, trying to keep your patients alive, and no one's watching your back. I think as when I was practicing, I've always felt that like nobody really watches our back. Nobody cares that the doctors are overworked. Like in Malaysia, it's terrible. We do 24 hours, no, 24 hours to 48-hour shifts. Like literally, because like there's the 9 to 5, everyone's there, but from 5 p.m. to the next day, 8 a.m. A little crew. So you are practically the only doctor for the department. You may have one or two colleagues to support you, but they are also watching like the other wards. So you're literally on your own, and you have to run for like 24 to 48 hours, because the next day, some of us have to continue working. Okay, probably 36 hours is the longest, not 48. 48, you would literally die.
But it's still inhumane. No
Yes.
other profession does that.
Correct. So we're forced to do 36 hours. I remember, I don't know this colleague directly, but she passed away because she fell asleep on the wheel after her 24-hour shift. The department tried to do something. I said try because it was only trial and nothing worked. It just, they changed things for 2 weeks. Like they say, okay, the next shift you come in at 2 and then you finish the next morning. So they try to cut the shift short, but it only lasted for 2 weeks and back to normal. 24 hours to 36 hours. Everyone goes through that. And it's not once a month. It can go up to 10 days a month. So can you imagine? It's every other day. And
It's brutal.
it is from junior to medical officers to specialists. We're expected to do that. And it feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel because you don't know, it never stops. It only stops when you stop working.
Yeah, and it can be changed. It has been changed in so many countries. You don't really need. I mean, I think what people assume is I'm going to need a lot more doctors if I start introducing shift work. But it's not true. You just need to have rested doctors, and you need to introduce handovers. It's a very simple concept. You just need to introduce rest periods. You need to look at your staffing, and it's not rocket science. It's very simple organization of the workforce, and it can be done. It's so simple. I think what stops it sometimes is that type of culture of I suffered, and so you have to suffer as well. That kind of revengeful, spiteful desire for everyone to go through the same kind of punishment. And why? Why can't I have a better life than you had? Why you, as my mentor, cannot celebrate my success? Cannot celebrate the fact that I have achieved a good result, or maybe my life is better as a result of your fights and your battles. Why do we have to default to this kind of negative behaviors? And I find it really limiting, and I find it's a worthwhile battle. It's something that a lot of colleagues have done in lots of different stages of career. Remember when I was a trainee in my first, no, what's that? One of my first years in training. Yeah, there have been people that try to ask me to work basically for free and go really early in the hospital, stay late, and I just said, "Oh, sorry. So my contract says this number of hours per week. I'm in here to do free work. It's not part of my learning." And yeah, they didn't have anything to say. You know, yeah, maybe I lost opportunities because of that. One of the reasons I decided to leave Italy was there was a lot of nepotism, and I didn't have anyone that would have supported me. I didn't have the family members in the medical profession. I was not connected to a religious organization or the Freemasons or a political party. I was on my own and I was outspoken and standing up for my own rights. So I knew that if I stayed in that environment, I would have probably spent easily years and years in some basic job that nobody wants to do without a chance for a career. And I thought, no, thank you. I want to get out of this environment. Also, there was a lot of accepted mediocrity, people in key influential positions of power that had acquired those positions without really earning it, without having any special characteristics. Often were a bit dangerous. There were some practices that were suboptimal, errors sometimes were swept under the carpet. There wasn't a comprehensive attention to clinical governance and managing risk. So all of that I felt went against my values, what I stand for. I wanted to see a different type of environment, a different type of medicine, a different type of practice, and I wanted to have a fair shot at having a career. So I decided to leave.
Okay, so tell us about your book, The Doctor's Voice. What is it about?
It's about looking at common problems that we all experience as doctors and looking at them under the light of possible solutions that we can adopt at different levels. So I wrote it for doctors, for us to have behaviors and tools to apply in our daily working lives, but also suggestions for decision makers. So shining a light on what is really going on in medical practice and talking about the unseen problems that are so pervasive, so toxic, so dysfunctional. And if we could fix those, we wouldn't only have better, healthier, happier doctors and more productive doctors, we would also fix so many problems that make healthcare dysfunctional and inefficient. So I try to talk about organizational problems, so planning ahead, planning for emergencies and contingencies, but also how to communicate better, how to avoid certain petty fights. There's quite a lot for everyone. And I just chose 10 topics, 10 common problems that I see happening again and again. I've probably been able to write another 50 more chapters about common problems. That was just the beginning of the journey.
Yeah, even from that 10 chapters, every chapter actually resonated with me. Like I've gone through everything, almost everything that you've written in the book. Like I said, I'm on the other side of the globe. In another healthcare system, similar but different. And everything that you've written there is so similar and so relatable. There's a chapter where you spoke about conflict. I guess maybe it's because it's human nature, right? So when I read your how you handle certain conflicts, I mean, I chuckled because I felt like I've gone through that before. I was a junior doctor, could not get a scan, had to go back up, let my specialist know. He will bring me down, and then we go see the radiologist together. And he's saying, "Why did you, this poor girl here? She's just trying to do a job. Why did you do that?" And it was so funny. I'm just thinking, it's like, oh, my daddy's brought me down to speak to this mean lady who didn't want to give me something.
Yeah, well, you know, I think sometimes to understand better a situation, if you zoom out and look at it as an observer, you notice some behaviors that are really ridiculous. Things that we used to do as kids in kindergarten during recreation hour. Yeah, and sometimes if you really pay attention to what people are saying, like when specialties fight about Who is going to look after this patient? So much time wasted to argue about one single admission with someone says, they should be under medicine. No, they should be under orthopedics. No, they should be under surgery. If you really look at what the patient needs, sometimes it needs an input from all those specialties, and as simple as that. And sometimes if you listen to what people are saying when they argue, it sounds like, I'm going to talk to my consultant. Oh, yes, I'm going to talk to my consultant. And it's like being in the kindergarten saying, I will tell the teacher. I'm going to tell my mom. My daddy will come and beat you up. You think, come on, we're adults, professionals. We're just trying to look after a patient. Why can't we leave all that aside and just bring back what we're trying to do? But again, you mentioned it's about human behavior. For me, when I see conflicts arise, the common framework is a little bit based on blame. People talk about professional standards and professional behavior, and this is how you're expected to behave. Nobody's really looking at the root causes. I don't think any of us wakes up in the morning thinking, today I'm going to go to work and I will be an absolute nightmare to my colleagues. But something happens in the way and you end up being an absolute nightmare. So when I look at it and I receive emails and incident reports, that person was rude, that other person acted out, it's much easier if you go and ask them, what happened that day? What made you were you at your best? Did something happen? Were you stressed? How did the people before that happened talk to you? How did you feel? And you start opening your eyes and understanding that sometimes it's just the end result of a series of events. It's the end result of being under pressure and being belittled and not being listened to, being frustrated, being stretched, and being told by your boss, say no to all admissions, we're full, we can't take any more patients. And things like that affect all of us. And sooner or later, our worst nature reveals. And do we need to be blamed for that? How about we look at the whole system and see what we can fix, what we can improve? I don't like blaming people or being the head teacher and say, you are naughty, you need to behave. Do you achieve anything telling people off? I honestly have never changed my behavior as a result of being told you've been naughty. I changed my behavior as a result of doing some introspection and looking inside and trying to understand what the triggers are. Why do I react like that to something that happens to me? But just being told to behave, it's pointless. It's a palliative approach to a bigger problem.
You mentioned that one of the tools you use to overcome conflict is through humor. How do you, like, if someone is, because it's a high stress environment, you really have to get all your work done and there's so much work to be done, so little time. How do you usually when you're angry and all this emotions come in, is your amygdala that's like fired up, right? That's the one where all that anger, and if you act on it, it feels good, and all of that. So what are the practical steps, like, for a doctor who's in that situation can take using humor to just deflate conflict?
Well, yeah, sometimes to stop your amygdala firing, you take a step back, you take a deep breath, you shut yourself up, count to 10, whatever works, and immediately you start seeing things a little bit clearly. You realize that your emotions are engaged and you have a choice in that moment whether to engage with them and carry on what was happening, or take a step back and react differently. So I think in that moment, we can choose, for example, to observe the situation as an outsider and think, okay, it's absurd, and make a remark about that. And sometimes using humor immediately diffuses the other person's anger and aggression. You make them laugh. They realize how stupid and childish they are being in that very moment. And you can make it about yourself. If you don't want to make another person angry, you can make a joke about yourself. Or you can make a joke about the situation. For example, I share in the book that something that I really have done. You mentioned going to radiology, and I remember one day that my FY1, so my house officer, had gone to radiology. Radiology said no. The show goes to radiology, radiology says no. The registrar goes to radiology, radiology say no. So I just go with the whole team into the radiology reporting room. I open the door and everything is silent and they're all working in the dark. I announce, who do I need to sleep with today to have a CT done for my patient? They all start laughing. And the head of radiology turns around and says, how can I help you, Dr. Garbelli? And just by having that kind of laugh, immediately I could explain the situation and why we needed a scan. And they said, okay, that makes sense. There wasn't anymore that defensive wall of, no, there's no indication, or you don't have the right differential diagnosis, or that we are not going to do it. Sometimes it's one of the tools that we can use. I'm not suggesting that we offer to sleep with a whole hospital every time. We can be mindful and choose the right joke at the right time, but sometimes it's just an icebreaker. It can bring us at the same level and be peer to peer, human to human. Let's talk about what we can do for this patient and no longer about I'm holding the power. I'm not going to give it up to you.
Yeah, I think there was a advice that was given to me a long time ago that really helped me go through. This person said, how another person treats you or like how they react is not a reflection of your own character. It's a reflection of their character. They are behaving in a way like being rude, being a bully, and all of that. It is them. It's not you, and don't take it personally.
Yeah, and it's not easy not to take it personally when we are in the situation. Again, it takes reflection and a bit of introspection and self mastery to get to the point where you can be the wiser person in this situation every time, most of the time. It's a journey. It's never going to be 100%. We all fail and learn and continuously have to improve. But recognizing again that there's a different way and also being open about that, being open about our failures, being open about our struggles, and sometimes just asking, how is your day going? You sound stressed. I had a horrible day. How about you? Sometimes people start opening up and react differently, and you can have a more collaborative conversation.
I guess it really depends. Like if you're with your peers and we have some sort of dark humor. I don't know if it's across the board, but I do notice we do have some sort of dark humor to help us get through the day. Laughing at something that if any of the jokes that we tell within the on-call room gets out, it's
Yeah,
so inappropriate.
people would be horrified. Yes, but yeah, we have to survive, and we find humor in the darkest places.
Yeah, I think that's something that I feel connected with my peers because only my peers can understand my dark humor. If I share any of that outside, it will be really frowned upon and I will be judged really badly for what I say.
I believe that also that is something that we need to demystify. So, for example, the public's expectation of how a doctor needs to behave. There is sometimes this disconnection between the doctors and the public, and I notice some people that look at us funny if we laugh, if we smile. So they are miserable in that moment. They're scared and they expect us to be at least serious and not be having fun at work. And if they are stressed because the perception is that the system is slow, they had to wait for a long time, and they see you sitting down, I don't know, sipping a cup of tea. They're gonna look at you funny and say, you're not working hard, and I'm here waiting for you. So again, there is this perception that to the moment we are just simply being human, we have to hide away from people because otherwise we'll be judged. And that's very toxic. Sometimes I intentionally just have the opposite approach. I go to patients with a smile. I crack some jokes and make them relax. I have an empathetic connection. I try to manage their frustrations, their anxiety, their fear. And we have beautiful, open conversations as a result. They see me as a human being. They ask me how my day is going. They understand when I come around 1 o'clock or 1:30 in the afternoon, and I say good morning because they still on my morning round. I haven't stopped for a break. I haven't stopped to have lunch. They had their lunch, they had their snooze, and I'm still there standing and going round. They changed their attitude. They no longer are demanding and dry and unempathetic. I think that's something that we can.
In your chapter, you mentioned there's a chapter in your book, you did mention that you deal with conflict by showing vulnerability. Openly said, I do not know what's going on with this patient. I don't know what to do. Now, the first part of this question I have is for the junior doctors. If any, okay, I'm not sure if it's across the board, but here, if any junior doctor were to ever say that in front of their consultant, we would be berated for not knowing what's going on. We will be shouted at, screamed at, scolded, made to feel like we're the scum of this planet. So how do we deal with this? How do you navigate this?
Maybe you can start from as usual. This is my assessment. It's a story. So the physical science is possible interpretation. These are other possible interpretations. This is what I propose to do. What do you think about that? I think that's a honest approach because rarely, sometimes you can make a diagnosis just by taking a very good story. 90% of what I do sometimes day by day is just to ask the right questions on top of what has already been asked to get to the point. But sometimes you need a whole lot more information. And I'm sorry, if your consultants, your senior doctors were in the same situation as you, they would be as confused there and perplexed and lost as you are because at the very beginning of the journey, you don't have enough elements. You're waiting for results. You're waiting for confirmation. You're waiting for to see how they respond to or not respond to a certain treatment. So it's very easy to be after a while when everything is available and has bubbled up and you've done all the work and be the smart guy that says, how possibly did you not see that? It was so obvious. It's sorry, but it doesn't work that way. If we're being truly honest, sometimes it takes a while to get to the point. And I think, again, it's part of a bullying culture. It's part of being able to open up. A senior doctor that treats people like that is a very poor role model. It's a negative role model. You can learn from them how not to be, how you don't want to be. Sometimes we also need a bit of that. We need friends and enemies, and sometimes we observe people behave in a certain way and we think, okay, I don't want to be that person ever in my life. You develop
How
a thick
can
skin.
can they navigate it? Because I have been on that end, and I have colleagues who were been on that end where we come up with the wrong diagnosis or we didn't know what to do. And I remember clearly one of the rounds, the consultant said to the patient, this is the worst doctor you will ever find. And that was all he said. He pointed at my colleague and he said that. And we walked off. It was a terrible moment. As a junior doctor, how do I navigate this if it ever happens?
I would start looking at support mechanisms. For example, and again, it's something that has different degrees of development in different systems and countries. If something like that had happened to me 25 years ago in Italy, I would have had much less power compared to nowadays, for example, in the UK. So a lot has changed. A lot of frameworks about what the representing organizations, who the regulators say about behavior, what employment laws say about behavior, what are the local trust rules, occupational health, human resources, there everything has shifted. So if anybody had that behavior today, they would lose their job. They would be sidelined, they wouldn't be allowed anywhere near trainees. But it took a long while to get there. People had to fight their fights. They had to find allies. They had to to be together and create representative organizations. So, for example, the trade unions worked for colleagues that work in certain industries. In healthcare, traditionally we don't have trade unions. We have representative bodies, but they can be allies, talking to a representative body, talking to a defense union or an insurance company, whatever we have access to, talking to our employer. Someone in the organization might have an open mind and an open heart, and they could be your first ally. Maybe the whole medical establishment is like that, but maybe the managers are not, and they have a different attitude and a different, different values. They wouldn't let anyone talk to them like that. And if we open up, they might start being on our side. I believe in collaboration. A lot of times there's this distinction, us and them. We are one against the other. We have opposite interests. But how about we start talking about common values and what we're trying to achieve, and have each other's back?
Okay, so I mean, okay, then that's the second part, because the first part, I guess, as junior doctors, is actually very hard because you're you're not in position of power or anything to do anything much. But what about for the specialists or for those senior doctors who are supposed to be leading the department and training? What should they do if they actually do come across this houseman who says that, hey, I actually don't know what I'm doing or what's going on with this patient? How can they navigate this? Because I'm sure some of them are really busy with all the amount of administrative works that's being piled onto them. And on top of that, all that clinical work. And then here I have a doctor who has supposedly graduated but don't know what he's doing. What should they be doing?
Well, I think it's about understanding what they mean by I don't know what I'm doing. So, for example, it might mean something completely different if you listen with the prejudice and a doctor says, I don't know what I'm doing. And what you hear is, I'm ignorant. I didn't go to medical school. I'm unsafe. I'm useless and I'm putting your career at risk. Then it's the end of the conversation. But if you just ask questions and say, for example, what do you mean? Are you uncertain about a diagnosis? Are you talking about you want some advice on the investigation plan? Or do you want us to go through the treatment plan together so that you feel more confident? Do you have any questions about the presentation? Then it's a more productive conversation. So it just takes a few more questions to understand each other better.
Okay. So I've heard of this story. He wasn't a colleague of mine, but I knew this person. He was in internal medicine. He had a patient that collapsed, needed someone to come and secure the airway because they were already doing CPR. So he calls for NS to come, but NS took a long time before they could arrive to the ward. They probably were busy because it's after hours. So, after hours, the skeletal crew. So he had to do what he had to do. He had to intubate the patient, secure the airway. But he's a very junior, just finished housemanship. So he's like sort of independent, but still new. So when NS arrived, although it was a successful intubation, this doctor was so furious. He said, do you think you had that capability to intubate? You shouldn't be intubating. And he punched my friend in the chest. So, but they had to resuscitate the patient. So my friend just decided, okay, I'm not going to think about this and let's just focus on the patient. But he never did anything after that. Like he didn't report, or he I guess he didn't know what he had to do or what he was supposed to do. Do you think the system has failed us in any way?
Yes, because it didn't give your friend the reassurance that he could speak up and just report this behavior to his mentor, his supervisor, so that they could do something about it. I think what sometimes we misunderstand when we assume that we have to do something ourselves about every single misbehavior, every single problem that surrounds us. But sometimes we just need to inform the right person and delegate and sit back. It's not your job as a trainee to deal with somebody else assaulting you. I mean, who would you? No employer would expect you to be in charge of acting on somebody else assaulting you if you were employed somewhere else. But somehow in medicine, we make it our problem to find a solution for everything. I think the failure is not informing you that you can talk to someone openly about what happens. For example, in the framework here in the UK would be you talk to your superior, you complete an incident form, you inform human resources about what has happened, and then somebody else takes care of that. They might ask you some more information about what has happened. They will ask some witnesses what has happened, and they will talk to the person and take action. Yeah, not knowing what to do is definitely a system failure.
And I think he probably felt that it could have been his fault, like, being made to feel that maybe it's
Yeah.
my fault.
The other system failure is in that scenario, you should have had a laryngeal mask available um, in the resuscitation trolley that anyone with minimum training can put down, and no anesthetist will come around and say you were not supposed to do it. I when I did my anesthetic training, I remember very often the anesthetist being a bit funny, breathing on my neck and saying, "If you break this person's teeth, it comes out of your salary," or something like that. Or they were describing, they were expecting me to describe the whole laryngeal anatomy. And sometimes I remember once clearly I just put a tube in and they told me off because I didn't describe all the anatomy perfectly. And I told them, it doesn't look anything like you described it. It looks like a sink. I saw a hole, I put the tube in, and the chest is moving. Are you happy? And then they read the medical report and they said, "Oh, you're right. This person had a laryngectomy." Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so since publishing this book, have you managed have many doctors connected with you who had similar frustrations?
Yes, and surprisingly also non-doctors. And some of the connection has also surprised me regarding other elements that I share in the book. For example, difficult childhood. For example, a colleague of mine has reached out and she shared that her nephew, as a result of reading my book, is now champion of diversity and inclusion in his university. So he's touching and transforming many lives as a result of connecting and understanding the value in it. It's something that deeply touches me. If my book can touch and transform even one single person's life, it's a great result.
Okay, so a lot of doctors are seen as a cog of in a massive system, but you and I both believe that they should be leaders of change. And so why is this crucial for doctors to take up leadership roles in like healthcare management or even be involved in it?
But it's not that there aren't enough doctors in leadership roles. I mean, in every hospital has doctors at different layers of the organization. Very often, what is missing is the input from doctors at the bottom of the organization, being able to feedback what's really going on and having a clear bidirectional communication channels. A lot of times it's a top-down approach, like typical corporate structure. We make the decisions, you implement them, you go and do it. Doesn't work well. The smartest organizations in the world understood that much, much earlier than healthcare, and we are way behind in being smart at changing our ways. And where doctors sometimes are behind is also the idea of leadership. The traditional models of training for leadership are based on concepts that are 50 years old and are based on other industries. And I went to many of those courses over the years and I was bored to death. I was disappointed and I thought it doesn't really help me to be a leader or be a better person. I learned a lot about leadership working one-to-one with a human behavior expert and understanding my own behavior first and everybody else's behavior, and understanding how to communicate, how to understanding the rules of the game. Sometimes they talk a lot in these courses about leadership styles and things, and they don't explain, for example, how to make plans, how to understand budgets, how to present ideas. It's really basic training. And the other thing that is probably missing is doctors in key roles in representative organizations. For example, the regulators. Sometimes our doctors are a minority and probably they have very little say into the decision making as a result. So I see that as an absurdity sometimes that, for example, why is the Ministry of Health of a certain country not a doctor, the minister? And people that work in the ministry, why aren't there more doctors? And sometimes it's because doctors are heavily cornered into clinical work. There's an expectation that, everybody knows we're short of doctors. There are not enough doctors. Keep them doing doctor's job, and somebody else will make decisions for them. And as a result, you have a lot of former nurses, like former healthcare administrators into those roles, and politicians, and clerical members, and very, very few doctors are in those roles. And the ones that are in those roles haven't done much training to empower themselves and become better leaders. And sometimes we have high expectations when a doctor finally achieves those high positions, and then we are immediately disappointed, thinking, you're just behaving like everyone else.
But what's different? Because you mentioned you went for a lot of leadership courses and they didn't meet your expectations. So what I guess what should a leader be? What is the key skill or key attributes of a leader?
I don't believe in a single solution. I think you need a toolbox. You need to be flexible and adapt yourself. You need to understand people. You need to understand the systems that you're working with, the rules of the game, the regulations. You need to not take things personally when game is tough. You need to be supportive when your peers are frustrated and come to you, offloading their emotions. Lot of qualities that we need to develop to be good leaders. Again, if we take the best of what we have observed in everybody else that we work with over the years, you can make that your own style. I don't think there is a single style of good leader that can be recommended. And it's a journey that you need to have yourself that brings you to being that person. It's not something that we can download in our brain and be that person. Maybe in the future with a brain interface, we'll download the leader module and look, we'll be plugged into the system and ready to go. But it takes some time. And it takes honesty and self-reflection. Sometimes you have to realize where you have failed and change your ways and become a bit a better, different person.
Okay, so like you're the clinical director of acute medicine, right, of a hospital in NHS. So that means that you're in charge of that department. So how are you leading that department differently from your predecessors?
That's a good question. I don't entirely know because when I joined, my predecessor had already left for a few weeks. So we didn't really overlap. So I have an indirect feeling of how I am different and um, by feedback and how people told me the stories. Few simple things. For example, I opened up to foreign doctors asking for clinical attachments. Previously was not permitted, and I thought, why not? It's a simple thing that we can give back. If I didn't have someone that opened the door for me when I was looking for a way in, I wouldn't be where I am today. And it's a simple gesture of appreciation and support that I can give to another person that will be a big asset to our healthcare system in the future. Similarly, sometimes it's persistence, not taking no as an answer, and finding different ways. If I really believe in a project and the importance of achieving a certain result, I find ways. I talk to different people, try to, if I fail on one side, I bring it back on another side, a different meeting until I get that result. And sometimes it's a very long game. It might take years. There are things that I am achieving now that I started asking for 4 years ago. Sometimes it's really difficult waiting and when you know you could do things much quicker if the system were more responsive. I would have loved to achieve a lot of the things much earlier, but you have to put up with organizations and other people, and sometimes financial obstacles. And it's rules of the game that are not always conducive to getting quick results.
Okay, so what's your advice for like the junior doctors who feel powerless or on the verge of quitting, whether they should continue practicing or not? What was your advice for them?
I would say build yourself, build your strength with your knowledge, be a good and amazing doctor that will protect you wherever you go. And when you feel like quitting, find someone to support you. For me, it was talking with someone, Tony, completely outside of healthcare, helping me to understand me. Do I really want to quit medicine? Or is it that I'm just fed up with the system? It's just that I feel disempowered. I feel trapped into the system. I tried so many different ways, and everywhere I look, it's the same. And it doesn't seem to be any end, any improvement, any way out. I think looking at your own journey with a different perspective, zooming out for a moment, helps a lot.
What about for specialists or senior doctors or head of departments or those that are supposedly in leadership position? Like, what should they be doing?
First of all, be authentic. You mentioned a lot of negative examples of people that display a lot of arrogance, a lot of power games, a lot of control. If they are being honest, very often all of that comes from insecurity, comes from hiding your weaknesses, comes from trying not to be authentic, scaring others before they can attack you. So it comes from fear. So they need to work on their own issues. They have a long way to mature and improve themselves and be more confidently and honest and open leaders. There are different styles, there are different ways of being, but we can uphold common values that are more conducive to an environment where we can thrive. And living constantly in fear and being manipulated, being controlled is something that nobody would sign up for.
As you're saying that, I just thought of something. So I realized when I was practicing, I only saw one way of improving myself, which is my technical skills. I'm going for difficult airway intubation courses. I'm going for all these resuscitation courses, how to manage all these critical patients. And that was how I saw progress. But I never did any self development. I was constantly angry. My communication skills were, I would say, now looking back, it was not great. I wasn't
Mine
very
too.
articulate. Yeah, I wasn't very articulate in conveying my ideas. I couldn't regulate my own emotions, but they were not something I thought was important to develop at all. I only saw technical skills, and you go for conferences and all that, all the scientific conferences to add things into your bag so that you can deal with a difficult patient, right? And I see this a lot with a lot of doctors, especially even the senior doctors, the specialists and all. For them, what was important is I go for these conferences, I do these papers, I present these papers. But when you look at them outside of that, like there's not much of a personal development. Like they're very angry. Nobody wants to speak to that. I've even been in an OT where when this surgeon walks in, it's pin drop silence. When he leaves, that's when it became
Everyone
warm.
is,
Yes.
yes.
So what's your take?
Well, that was my journey as well at the beginning. And for the majority of our colleagues, I still think I'm probably a bit of an exception. And that's why I'm trying to shine a light on different ways of being. If you look at my CV for years and years and years, I did the same. I went to all the courses and conferences and all it was about medicine. And out of curiosity and frustration and personal connections, I started dabbling into other things. And initially it was curiosity, like, okay, let's go and do a course on healing, on meditation, on yoga and tantra and this and that. And when it really started shifting was working one-to-one with a life coach. There's a difference between going to a course, an environment where you're one in a big audience and you're told some generic concepts. You're challenged to do some exercise and jump up and down and get your frustration out or walk on hot coals. It ends there. You go home and you're back to square one. You're yourself again. When you work with someone for years regularly, it's a little bit like going to therapy or psychoanalysis or having CBT or NLP. It's a journey. You're looking at transforming yourself, looking inside, analyzing your behavior, your triggers. That makes you mature, that makes you transform, that makes you realize more about yourself, about others, about what makes us function as humans. And that is invaluable when we are trying to be leaders and become teachers and become influencers. I learned a lot. I invested a lot. I invested a lot of money in this journey, a lot of time and energy. But I gained a lot as a result. I'm a different person, and I cannot say I have arrived. I'm a finished product. I am perfect. I'm still learning. I'm still transforming, and I will continue to do so for the rest of my life. And I'm acquiring new tools. I'm learning from new challenges. I make them mine. And then I have an opportunity to share the learning with others and move on.
I think that's so important because we forget the human behind the white coat.
Totally. So we are expected to take all those roles and responsibilities without anyone really supporting us in our journey. I notice how people behave differently, even in the same organization. You sometimes see the managers, they have these one-to-one meetings where they talk to each other and they talk about their aspirations, their career, how they feel in their role. Do they have enough support? Is there anything that they need help with? And blah, blah, blah. And as doctors, the energy very often is different. Is your boss tells you what to do and what are the objectives, and it gives you a list of things to achieve and to do. And you leave those meetings thinking, what about me? Why are you haven't even asked me what I'm going to do next year. Do I want to continue being here? Do I fit in? Do I have other desires and aspirations? Sometimes we delegate that to a particular box. That's part of your appraisal. You have that conversation with your appraiser, and again, it's limiting ourselves. It's reducing our possibilities and basically trying to shrink ourselves as human beings and just pretending to be machines, and we're not. The human part sooner or later comes out and wants to be heard, wants to be listened to, wants to grow, wants to be part of who we are every day. Our whole selves to work. We want to connect with other people. We want to connect with our patients. We want to thrive in our environment, and it needs to be part of the game.
That's very, very deep. Now, I have one final question for you. This is a question that I ask all my guests. How do you see yourself impacting healthcare differently?
My desire is to continue being a thought leader. So thank you for saying that this last thought was deep. And I have many thoughts that I love sharing with others and being able to bit by bit influence the way we do healthcare. For me, the core value is looking at sustainability in a different way. Most people look at the economic impact, they look at the environmental impact. I look at how this is affecting us, doctors and nurses, and allied healthcare practitioners. What we do truly sustainable in the long run? And the answer is, if we keep doing it like we've been doing it until now, no, we're all a bit broken. We're all tired. We need to change the rules of the game. And I also look at how it is sustainable for the future. That I think that a project that I am involved in now, I just finished writing a new book called The Doctor's Future. It's all about how we can prepare or not prepare for the introduction and the use of AI, robotics, and in the very far future, AI human brain interface being heavily utilized in healthcare. We are behind when it comes to regulations and frameworks and awareness, but these systems are already in use and they come with threats, they come with lots of promises, and we need to prepare ourselves. So I'm constantly looking at the future too.
Okay, how can the audience reach you, Dr. Garbelli?
You can find me on most social media at Dr. Garbelli on Instagram and on Threads. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, and I have a website, drgarbelli.com, where you can find my projects. You can book me for a consultation, and you can keep up to date with the new products and new journeys.
Okay, thank you so much. If you guys have been enjoying our conversation and considering exploring new career paths, be sure to check out our non-clinical Pathfinder workshop, and also do check out our annual Disruptive Doctors Conference that's happening this 20th and 21st of September, where like-minded doctors like you come together, share ideas, and impact healthcare differently. And also our Disruptive Doctors app is up. Please download and start connecting with more doctors like Dr. Garbelli. Now that wraps up another episode of Postcall Beyond the White Coat. Until then, I'm Dr. Selina. Take care and keep disrupting the norm.
Join Disruptive Doctors. Oh, oh, Disruptive Doctors. Impact.